Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for the webinar From Zero to Hero, Starting and Scaling B2B Personalization. I'm Greg Gerla, the Marketing Manager here at FunnelEnvy, and I'm very excited to have with us two B2B marketing experts ready to talk personalization with us. First, we've got Arun Sivashankaran, the CEO of FunnelEnvy. Arun leads our team of strategists, analysts, and engineers to focus on delivering more valuable experiences for B2B customers. And joining Arun is Takeshi Young. Takeshi is the web marketing lead at Optimizely, where he manages their website as well as the Optimizely on Optimizely team, which is responsible for running optimization at Optimizely. Thank you for joining us today, guys. And to start us off, we have Arun.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks to all of you for joining today, and certainly Takeshi and our partners at Optimizely for being part of this. So I think it helps to start out with a goal for personalization, enterprise B2B personalization. Personalization is not, just a vanity exercise here at FunnelEnvy. It has real and tangible business objectives. So the goal for us with personalization is to increase conversions for your highest value customers through highly relevant campaigns that lead to engagement. And when we're talking about customers, those are often accounts, especially in an account-based marketing context. And that idea of most valuable and highest value is something that I'm going to be coming back to and important to keep in mind as we go through this today. So with that goal in mind, that should elicit some important questions. What customers are the most valuable, and how do you go about identifying them? What KPIs are you actually optimizing for? And what engagements are going to lead to those outcomes? So there are a lot of ways you can sort of identify the value that personalization can bring to your marketing stack. Here's one model where we're looking at the lead value from a target account, your most important customers, versus the lead value from non-target accounts, that long tail. And what we're saying here is with personalization, we can actually affect the mix of leads coming in and move from a model where you're maybe getting 10% of your leads from those target accounts to a model in personalization where there's a more equitable distribution, and you're getting 50% of your leads from your most valuable customers or target accounts. Now, obviously, if you're able to alter that lead mix accordingly, you should see a corresponding increase in the lead value and ultimately more ROI down funnel. Now, again, this is only one way to look at it. Your model and your numbers are very likely different. What we do see, commonly here at FunnelEnvy is that the greater the discrepancy between the potential economic impact of your most important accounts, your target accounts, versus kind of everyone else, the long tail, the more effective personalization can be for you. And obviously, that underpins a lot of the concepts with account-based marketing and account-based personalization. So with that in mind, what we're really trying to achieve with personalization is identifying those most valuable accounts and moving them down the engagement path. To do that, you need to keep two concepts in mind. The first is segmentation. How are you actually going to segment your audience and visitors into audiences to be able to identify which ones are most valuable? And really, segmentation has to operate for enterprise B2B on both an account as well as individual level. Second concept is obviously the engagement themselves. Content is obviously very effective for enterprise B2B, but let's not neglect the impact of offline engagement, events, sales activity, etc. And finally, the various stages that you have in your funnel, from MQLs, SQLs, however you define it, to be able to track and measure activity and outcomes throughout the funnel. So digging a little bit deeper into segmentation, the typical types of segmentation that we see for account-based personalization start with your account-based, your target account list and your tiers. If you're doing ABM, you probably have target account lists and that tiered out. And so using that to drive personalization is a great starting point. Industry-based personalization is really common. A lot of websites already have industry-specific content out there, so that it presents some great reuse opportunities to personalize based on industry. Company size is a really common one. Showing differentiated experiences to your enterprise customers versus your SMBs, and segmentation accordingly based on company size. I think technology presents some interesting opportunities as well for segmentation, showing personalized experiences based on segments that you define to visitors that have competitive technologies, for example, or complementary technologies. And last on this list is existing customers. So you can take a binary approach here where you're segmenting and personalizing for existing customers versus net new. You can get more granular as well, especially if you're selling multiple products and segmenting, the products that customers already have in an effort to try to upsell them and expand them to complementary products or services. On the engagement side of the equation, SiriusDecisions recently came out with the updated waterfall. It reflects various stages, both at an individual and account level, and you very likely have something similar that mirrors this with different stages throughout your funnel. Those are important to keep in mind as you're thinking about personalization, but so are the engagements that lead up to those stages, the content and other activities that you do that lead to the outcomes that you're defining. So it's pretty common for us to see with B2B marketing, marketers thinking about the website as primarily as a vehicle to drive leads, to get form fills and push more leads into the top of the funnel. And that is both a valid and valuable use of personalization, but in our opinion, account-based personalization is not limited to that. You can go further down funnel and affect your qualified leads, your MQLs and SQLs, as well as the opportunities. And even beyond that to post-purchase, especially if you're a SaaS or subscription business, into expansions for existing customers and engagement, reducing churn, increasing renewals. So if you're thinking about these kind of KPIs across the funnel that you're trying to impact with personalization, it's important to keep in mind that you have a combination of individual KPIs as well as account level KPIs. So that's why your segmentation and personalization really has to support both individuals as well as accounts. So then coming to the topic of how you actually measure and optimize these conversion rates and report on them. So a lot of you are probably familiar with a conversion rate that looks something like this, a single number, and that's obviously some percentage that's calculated based on entrances, divided by the number of completions. That could be visitors over the number of form fills, or in a context of an experiment, entrances to the experiment over the goal completions. Now, this kind of single metric can work well at the top of the funnel if you're looking at form completions to leads, but it starts really breaking down when you're looking at a longer time frame. It works well when the time interval between completion and entrance is pretty short, but over longer time periods, it really doesn't work, and it's not a great way to be looking at those conversion rates. And so to understand why, it's probably best illustrated by example. So let's say that you're trying to evaluate the visitor or lead to SAL conversion rate over a 12-week period. And on average, it takes 8 weeks for that conversion to happen. And that's all of the time it takes for the visitor to fill out the form, get nurtured, for sales to review that an MQL, set up that conversation, and all of that activity. So over that 12-week period that you're evaluating, you're going to have different cohorts within that population. You're going to have people that entered that analysis in week 1, in week 2, all the way up to people that that more recently entered in week 12, and you can break those down into weekly cohorts. Now, that week 1 population, they're going to have had 11 weeks to convert, and given that it takes 8 weeks on average, you should expect a large number of them to have converted. But where it really starts breaking down is your week 12 group. Your week 12 group is going to have had less than 1 week to convert into SAL. And because it takes 8 weeks, you should expect that very few of them, if any, will have actually converted. And so those more recent cohorts, the more recent entrants into that group, are really going to start distorting your number. And that's why it's not a great way to accurately gauge the conversion rate over a long time. So how do you solve that? Well, you plot independently, and you look at those cohorts independently over time. So you can plot out week 1, week 2, all the way up to the most recent cohort, and look at how they're converting over time. And if you're used to retention reporting and analysis and churn analysis, you definitely work with cohorts like this. This seems to be a little bit less done in demand gen funnels, but if you're thinking about down funnel KPIs and optimizing those, it's definitely important to keep in mind. So with this in mind, how then do you layer on and evaluate how your value-based audiences and segments that we talk about are converting over time? So one way to do that is to pick a point in time, and this could be something like your 8-week conversion average, and say we're going to look at our audiences and how they're converting at that point in time. So to do that, you can plot those conversion rates not by week and not by time, but by time-based cohort, and break those down by your important audiences. And these can be any of the audiences that are relevant to your business. But with this type of analysis, you can actually see how your different audiences and your segments are converting over time based on those cohort conversions at that point in time. So what you should expect then is, as you're running personalization campaigns, that the curves start going up and the numbers start improving depending on which segments you're targeting. So with all of that in mind, what kind of opportunities do we typically see across the customer journey for personalization? Well, let's start with the top of the funnel. As we talked about, content-based personalization based on firmographics and accounts. Industry-based personalization, as I mentioned, is really common, and because a lot of the reuse opportunities with existing content, but also individual personalization, thinking about the role or the persona. Doing this can drive a lot more both lead flow as well as account engagement. Most of you already have marketing automation in place. You've segmented your lead database and you have a content nurture stream that's going out over email. Well, what about doing real-time lead nurture and nurturing that prospective lead or that lead when they're engaged with you in real time on the site? If you can do that effectively, you should be able to drive MQL velocity and conversions of that KPI. Obviously, differentiated experiences for existing customers. This can affect expansions, renewals, and churn. At FunnelEnvy, we've been doing more trial conversion and onboarding experience personalization. If you're a SaaS business and you have a trial or onboarding experience, you know that these are typically very highly correlated to your retention metrics. And so improving the outcomes in your trial or in your onboarding can have a significant impact on retention. And finally, we spend a lot of time talking about the website experience, but if you are thinking about it holistically in the overall customer experience, connecting those personalized website experiences to other channels, retargeting, chat, phone, email, that can be effective at improving any of these KPIs. So to jump into some specific examples, starting at the top of the funnel, industry-based personalization. A lot of you that have industry-specific pages and content, that's often buried somewhere deep in your site. And if you can identify the industry of an anonymous visitor, you have an opportunity to reuse that content in other places. And the homepage is a great example because it's typically highly trafficked and typically relatively generic content at the top of the funnel. So if you can identify the industry of that visitor and show them more relevant content to their industry, you should be able to drive top of the funnel engagement. This also extends to gated content. If you can take a piece of gated content that's somewhat generic in nature, and again, identify the firmographic attributes like industry that are important for you, and show that visitor a more specific, personalized piece of content as well as call to action, you should be able to see more lead flow. I think in this experiment that we ran, we saw over a 200% increase in leads as a result of this personalization. I really like what our friends at Envision are doing in this example here. They're using the account name of the visitor as well as the names of competitors based on the industry that they're in, and making it kind of a competitive promotion. Look how your ROI compares against your biggest competitors. And just thinking about the nature of visitors and the sort of competitive nature, it's something that I think is really compelling. Going a little bit deeper into the funnel then, and into this idea of real-time content nurture. So if you're able to segment your visitors by lead score, which you typically have in your marketing automation, and personalize the next incremental engagement, show them the next piece of content that they're likely to engage with, you should be able to drive incremental conversion and conversion to MQL. Now you can take this a step further, as you see here, where you're actually segmenting that engagement or segmenting that campaign by industry and making it even more relevant. And then the last example I'll talk about here is the idea of personalizing for existing customers. So if you go to the Salesforce homepage and you're not a customer, you see this experience, which is very direct response, trying to get you to convert to their flagship product and sign up for the free trial and get you to convert right away. If you are a customer, though, and they've cookied you as a customer, you go to the homepage, you see a completely different experience. The specifics of that experience are going to vary based on the campaign that they're running or the event that they're holding at the time. Typically, it's something it's an opportunity to expand, to look at new products, or get some training, or engage with an event. If you do engage, they've actually done a really good job of connecting that to other channels. In this example, I was poking around at the Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and as soon as I got in there, I got an email and a phone call, referencing my interest in what I saw on the website and offering a conversation. So, some suggestions to get started with personalization. Certainly reusing some of the existing content that you have. Personalization over time can put more of a burden on your content team, so start with what you already have. And if you can map some of that existing content to your high-value segments and audiences, you have an opportunity to reuse it, especially on those more generic pages, those high-traffic generic pages. Focusing on the high leverage opportunities for engagement. There are areas of your site and areas in your funnel where there's an opportunity to engage more high intent and traffic, and really good opportunities for personalization. I think a great example of this is SaaS pricing pages. Lots of traffic, high intent, and also segmented based on audience and firmographic characteristics. Understanding your addressable traffic, so you're not going to be able to personalize and identify for every visitor that comes to your site. So really breaking down by audience, by opportunity stage, by potential impact, your addressable traffic, and having a strategy in place to be able to segment accordingly is an important part of getting started. And finally, underpinning that idea of addressable traffic, what is your data integration and activation strategy? And that's something that we'll be coming back to later on in the webinar. So at this point, I want to hand it off to Takeshi, who will be talking about what they're up to at Optimizely.
Thanks, Arun. Those are some great examples of personalization and account-based marketing. And ABM has been a huge focus for us here at Optimizely as well, especially over the past couple of years as we've moved up market and away from our old volume-based approach to online marketing. So today I wanted to talk about our approach to account-based marketing and how we've been able to bring that to life on our website through personalization. But first I want to give a quick overview of the account-based marketing model and how that informs our campaigns. So here we have the ABM pyramid. Some of you guys may be familiar with it. It's basically a breakdown of your target accounts into distinct segments. And a lot of the times when we think about account-based marketing, we think of one-to-one marketing and a heavy investment of time and resources. But there are actually different tiers to ABM, and those tiers inform the degree to which we invest in creating personalized experiences. And different marketers have different names for these, but basically at the top you have your strategic accounts, and these are going to be your most valuable accounts and prospects, the million-dollar deals where it makes sense to invest a lot of time and resources into creating a tailored experience for them. And below that we have what we here call our enterprise accounts, and these are accounts that are still valuable, but where we take a one-to-many approach to personalization. And below that, we have our corporate or mid-market segment. And there are thousands of companies for us that fall into this segment. So this is where we use more programmatic techniques to really scale out our personalization examples or efforts. So let me share some concrete examples. So this is our homepage, and like a lot of other companies getting started with personalization, the homepage was one of the first places that we started personalizing, since it's a high visibility page that gets a lot of traffic. And as you can see here, the homepage has been personalized for a specific company, in this case Salesforce, and we have roughly 40 of these completely custom homepages, and this is something that we reserve for our strategic accounts. And we actually launched this as an A/B test as part of our website redesign, and we saw a 100% increase in engagement on our homepage, as well as tons of positive qualitative feedback from our sales team about what a great impression the personalized homepage created when they were meeting with prospects. So that's an example of account-based personalization for strategic accounts. Now let's move down the pyramid to our enterprise accounts. Here's something cool that we're doing with our request demo page. So you might not be able to tell from the image, but the image in the monitor here is actually displaying the actual website of the visitor, in this case, the New York Times. And this is something we're able to do through a combination of firmographic data as well as our image host provider. And there's actually a small cost associated with generating these screenshots. So it's not something that we do for every visitor, but only those that meet a certain threshold. So this is an example of ABM where we're not creating a completely custom experience, but we're still able to provide a tailored experience to a specific segment of our visitors. This is another example of a personalization campaign that's targeted at our enterprise segment. This is something that we actually haven't launched yet, but it's something that we've built with the help of FunnelEnvy, where we're displaying a chat box to our high-value prospects and customers. And the hypothesis here is that by providing live chat on our site to high-value accounts, we'll be able to create a more positive experience for prospects and customers. Again, this isn't something we'd be able to roll out to the hundreds of thousands of visitors that visit Optimizely every month, but it's a personalized experience that we'll be able to provide for our strategic and enterprise accounts. So we've talked a little bit about the personalized experiences we've created for our strategic and enterprise accounts. So let's move further down the pyramid and talk about our corporate segment. So there are a number of places throughout our site that we use more scalable personalization campaigns to target more visitors. For example, our PPC Landing Page is a high traffic page on our site that we send tons of paid traffic to, and this is something that we personalize with the visitor's company name and other firmographic data when we're able to identify it. Another example, and this is a simple but powerful one, is personalizing the customer logos that are shown on our site based on industry. So one of the most commonly asked questions that our salespeople get is, which of our competitors are using your product? And personalizing logos is a way we're able to do this online. If you go to our customers page, we even take this a step further and personalize the customer quotes and case studies that are displayed on the page based on the visitor's industry. And another place where we personalize our site based on industry is with our promotional cards. And so these are personalized to show your content that's relevant to you based on your industry and behavior. So these are all ways that we personalize our site in an automated way for a broader swath of our audience. So we've covered strategic, enterprise, and corporate accounts, but what about the visitors who aren't on the pyramid, who might not be ideal customers for your business? Well, another campaign that we've been running right now is one which changes all of the contact sales CTAs throughout our site to say buy now instead for visitors that we identify as being non-target customers. So people who are in countries that we can't serve right now, or people who are at companies that aren't large enough to take advantage of our enterprise plan. So these visitors, we direct them to our pay-as-you-go plan, which is a plan that doesn't require a contract, and you don't have to sign up and you can just sign up for it right on the website without having to speak to a salesperson. So this is a way in which we're able to avoid passing unqualified leads to sales, so we can stay focused on our target accounts. And this is something that our sales team has been really happy about because we've been able to cut down on the number of unqualified leads significantly. So those are a few examples of how we use Optimizely at Optimizely to personalize our website and support our account-based marketing strategy. Of course, there's a lot of personalization that we do on our site that I didn't touch on today that goes beyond account-based personalization, using things like behavioral targeting, automated recommendations, localization, even the time of day to personalize the experience of our visitors. So even if we don't have any account level information for a visitor, we're still able to create a personalized experience for them on the site. So where do we go from here, and how do we scale our personalization? So working here at Optimizely, it's been a tremendous learning experience for me over the past year since we released our personalization product, and working with the people who are building the technology that's allowed us to transform our website and deliver personalized experiences to our visitors. What my team is working on now is working to scale our personalization so that we can create even more tailored experiences for our visitors. And I wanted to share a few tips with you guys on how to scale your personalization. So the first thing I want to talk about that's been tremendous for us in scaling our personalization campaigns are extensions. So extensions are a feature in Optimizely X, where your developer can create templatized widgets that marketers and non-technical users can use to easily create experiences. So for example, for the homepage campaign that I talked about earlier, we have extensions that allow us to quickly set up and launch new experiences for customers. If you have the copy and the images ready, you can literally launch new experiences in 2 minutes. So extensions have been huge for us in being able to quickly launch new experiences for target accounts. The second thing I want to talk about is leveraging first-party data. So we've talked a lot about leveraging third-party firmographic data, such as company name and industry to personalize. But right now we're working on building out campaigns that leverage our own first-party data. So if you're like us, you probably already have a ton of data about your customers and prospects stored in your data warehouse. And Optimizely has a feature called Dynamic Customer Profiles, or DCP, that allows you to upload that data right to Optimizely and create audiences for them. So for example, in our data warehouse, we have a ton of data about our customers, like what products they own, how many experiments they've created, and even when the last time they logged into the product was. So using this data, we're working on campaigns to personalize the content that they see on our site. And in this way, we'll be able to create completely tailored experiences for each of our users, but do it in a way that's very programmatic and scalable. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about today is just really designing with personalization in mind. So this is really about incorporating personalization into your web development process. And there's 3 different ways that we've been approaching this. So the first of these is modularization. So as I mentioned earlier, we started our personalization journey with our homepage, but over time we've taken elements from the homepage and modularized them so that we can reuse them throughout our site. So a modular site design with common components makes it easy to create more personalized experiences that you can reuse throughout your website. Another thing that we're moving towards, and this is a little bit more technical, is moving away from using classes and IDs as selectors and instead using data attributes. And there are a few reasons for this. First, we found that classes are unreliable as selectors because they can be ambiguous, and IDs are generally more reliable, but when pages are updated and classes and IDs on a page can inadvertently be changed by designers or engineers, they can break your campaigns. So using data attributes is a more reliable way of targeting experiences on our site, especially as we scale out our program. Setting up standardized data attributes can also allow you to automatically track events and conversions on your site. So if you're designing with personalization in mind, consider using data attributes as a more scalable way of targeting your campaigns. And finally, I think the most important thing for us as we've scaled our personalization is just really having a personalization mentality. So rather than developing a page first and then trying to tack on personalization afterwards, we're really starting to think about personalization during the conceptual stage and how we can design the page so that we're not just designing a single page that appeals to all audiences, but instead creating separate experiences for each of our key audiences. And that's the thing that's helped scale personalization the most at Optimizely, is just having a personalization mindset and thinking about personalization as a regular part of our web development process. Back to you, Rowan.
Thanks, Takeshi. Great examples. I really liked that one about with personalizing to your lower tier visitors to actually free up your marketing and sales team to focus on the higher tiers. So I wanted to expand on what Takeshi started talking about with respect to scaling personalization, starting with the process and methodology. Again, to get results and real ROI out of a personalization program at scale requires a deliberate approach and process. So the strategy, starting with the strategy and really understanding and focusing on the high value opportunities, both in terms of the segmentation and the audiences that you're personalizing for, as well as the opportunities across the funnel and on your site, and really having an understanding of those and putting focus into those. Second part of it is obviously research and getting into the data to be able to create valid hypotheses for personalization campaigns. Experimentation is really, really important. It's not just about delivering a campaign, it's also about the learning that comes with. Optimizely makes it really easy to be able to embed experimentation within your personalization process. And so really understanding those numbers is going to inform your personalization program and the results you get from it longer term. And then finally, attribution, making sure that you understand the data and you're doing things like sending your campaign and impression data to your data warehouse so that your data scientists can understand the impact of your personalization activities to your down funnel outcomes and KPIs. Some of the other challenges in scaling personalization are kind of inherent to rules-based personalization, which is a lot of the examples that we've been talking about, where you set up a lot of the rules and campaigns ahead of time. So as you bring more and more data sources to bear, each of which has its own taxonomy, data dictionary, hierarchy, forcing the marketers to segment off of all of those data sources becomes challenging at scale. Just the sheer number of rules that have to be managed at an audience level, at a campaign level, and the number of campaigns and engagements that marketers have to reason about and manage becomes daunting at scale. And then finally, I think one of the biggest challenges with a purely rule-based approach to personalization is that it's pretty static unless humans intervene. So conditions change all of the time, and a lot of times you don't have control over that. That could be, a PR event. It could be a competitor announcing something new. Any of those things could have an effect on the way visitors engage with and behave relative to your personalization campaigns. So if unless a human comes in and accounts for those things and looks at the results of those and makes changes, the model does not update. Similarly, you're getting down funnel outcomes all the time. You're getting more and more data, especially in an enterprise B2B sales and marketing funnel that should come back and inform your personalization campaigns and those engagements that you're trying to drive. And that requires marketers and analysts to reason about and change those personalization campaigns. And all of that human intervention is in and of itself a barrier to scale. So how do you go about solving for this? Well, one part of it is a data activation problem. At FunnelEnvy, we really think about personalization as being data activation, and therefore personalization at scale being data activation at scale. So over time, you can bring a variety of data sources to bear to your personalization efforts. First-party data, as Takeshi mentioned, in your CRM, your marketing automation, your internal data warehouses and applications. Third-party data, reverse IP and firmographic data is very popular, but also cookie data stores that potentially show intent. And then you've got all of the behavioral activity, both on-site and offline. And all of those sources can create a really rich data set for personalization campaigns. But they do, in our opinion, require a pretty holistic data activation strategy. And that data activation strategy for enterprise B2B, for all of the reasons that we mentioned earlier, has to operate at both an account and individual level. So what are the key elements of that we see that make for an effective data activation strategy? I think the first part of it is unification. So all of these sources are going to have both account and individual data, and in different places. So bringing together that data at a account and individual level, unifying it and normalizing it for the purposes of segmentation by marketers is going to be increasingly important as your personalization and data activation program scales. Managing identities. Enterprise B2B sales cycles are long. So managing the identity and tracking the identity of the account and individual beyond cookie expiration through the course of their customer journey is really important to be able to optimize down funnel outcomes. Since this is personalization, performance is critical. As you bring all of this data together and unify it, that's one part of the equation. The other part of it is delivering that with millisecond resolution to your website to be able to do some of this above the fold, aggressive personalization campaigns. Asking yourself if your data activation strategy is providing the insights that your marketers need to make effective decisions. Are they able to identify the audiences that are most valuable? Are they able to identify the engagements which have the highest correlation to the important down funnel outcomes? Is an important part of your data activation strategy. And then finally, that outcome reporting itself and making sure that your data activation reinforces the attribution model and vice versa, so that you are very closely aligned to the important KPIs of the business. So when you do have a effective data activation strategy in place, you open up opportunities then for predictive technologies and machine learning. And there's a lot of talk about that. I want to contextualize some of these capabilities to what I see as being really effective in an enterprise B2B personalization scenario. So the first concept is I think that marketers aren't in danger of being replaced anytime soon when it comes to personalization by the machines. Marketers are still going to be, it's still really important for marketers to focus on the user experience, the campaigns, the best way to engage a particular audience and get them to engage. But there, as we've seen, there's a lot of analytical decisioning, the segmentation rules, the engagements that are most important, even things like traffic and traffic allocation that can be automated and that machines are particularly good at. We do in account-based marketing have certain rules in place, whether that's industry groups, account tiers, all of these sorts of a priori rules that are important to have in place. So we can't transition from that relatively rigid set of rules to a purely predictive world where we're just taking guesses on what's effective. So the optimal solution is a predictive capability that works in conjunction with those existing rules. And finally, what we're really looking for with injecting predictive and machine learning capability into our personalization stack is a better adaptability to some of those changing conditions and down funnel outcomes over time without requiring constant human intervention. So what are the key elements of bringing in some of this predictive capability into enterprise B2B personalization? Well, first is the propensity modeling. So all of these engagements that we're talking about are pretty loosely coupled. Customers typically don't go from engagement A to engagement B to engagement C in a very linear way. Usually it's all over the place. So really understanding what engagements in what sequence for what audiences are most likely to result in conversion, especially as you layer in more and more segments and audiences, is something that the machines can do relatively well and at scale. Once you've got those propensity models in place, you open up opportunities for prediction then, and identifying and helping marketers pinpoint both the audiences and engagements that are most likely to maximize their conversion outcomes. And finally, there's that idea of learning that really brings in that adaptability and flexibility over time. As new data comes in, as new down funnel outcomes and the attribution and model is updated, as events change, the system can learn over time and inform both the propensity as well as predicted models. And with that, I want to thank you all for attending. I think it's time for some Q&A.
Yeah, awesome, guys. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Some great examples in there as well, so you guys are using personalization. We're going to go to the Q&A portion right now. We've got about time for one question each. So I've got one here for Arun. Can personalization be effective for sites without a lot of traffic?
Absolutely, and that is the reality with enterprise B2B. We at FunnelEnvy, over time we've worked with a lot of large e-commerce sites, and obviously we've worked with a lot of enterprise B2B sites, and you just typically don't have the traffic of your B2C counterparts. That's why it is important to keep that idea of value in mind when you're thinking about your traffic. What you do have in enterprise B2B is a pretty significant and wide distribution between your lower tier accounts and your most valuable accounts. So if you are able to impact and the larger accounts and the high value accounts, and those deal sizes are 6 or 7 figures, there's value there. And so that thinking about it not only in terms of conversion rate, but also your ability to impact your most valuable customers and drive engagement from them, can lead to a model where personalization makes a lot of sense.
Great. Thanks, Arun. Take a step back. Everyone, if you have more questions, feel free to ask them. If we can't get to them here on this panel, we'll follow up with you individually. Next, I'll go to Takeshi. So how do you keep track of all the different campaigns that you're running and that you were talking about during your presentation?
Thanks for the question. So we tried a number of different approaches here at Optimizely. So in the past, we've tried Jira, Trello, even Google Docs to keep track of all the things that are running. But lately, what we've been using is Experiment Engine. which is a project management tool that was built specifically for optimization. And actually, we just acquired the company last month, and we've been using it internally, and it's working great for us. And soon it's going to be built right into Optimizely, so stay tuned for that.
Awesome. What was the name again? Experiment Engine?
Yeah, Experiment Engine.
Great, great. All right, I have to check that out. Have one question here from Steve Hoffer. I'll let Arun answer this one. What do you find to be the best sources for augmenting your customer information?
Well, the abstract answer is whatever works best in your context. Typically, what we see with ABM is a combination of first and third-party data, and that's what we typically run into. So, your first-party data is, and by that I mean what's in your marketing automation, what's in your CRM, but even the behaviors that visitors taking on-site and offline. That tends to be the most reliable, especially for your business. That being said, that probably only captures some fraction of the website visitors of the visitors that are coming to your website. Maybe 5% of your traffic actually converts to lead. So the advantage of using a third-party data provider is that you can get significantly more coverage. And it's important to understand that coverage that you get, not only in aggregate across all the website traffic, but by tier, because a 30% overall match rate from a third-party data provider can actually be much higher at your larger strategic accounts because they're larger organizations that have dedicated IP blocks. So all of that is to say that the most effective data strategy is typically some combination of those, but then that puts more burden on your need to sort of normalize and unify that data.
Excellent, excellent. All right, we've got time for two more questions here. It's from Marcus Frank. I believe this is probably best answered again from you, Arun. Where do DMPs and CMPs fit into the equation, and how do they integrate into the personalization data stream and engagement strategies?
So DMPs, and for those of you that aren't familiar with DMPs, they're born out of the ad tech world. It stands for Data Management Platform. I mean, they are in many ways used for segmentation, right, and building audiences and delivering those. And so we do see those entering in personalization. The one challenge that I think that I have with a DMP, especially in an account-based personalization enterprise B2B world, is that they don't have an account-based context. Typically, they work at an individual level, and you're not treating the account necessarily as a first-order object within the DMP. Now, there are a lot of DMPs out there, and as soon as I say this, I'm probably wrong and missing one that does this. That being said, we in many cases with account-based marketing and account-based personalization, our segmentation and KPIs operate at an account-based level. So thinking about the account as a first-order citizen within our segmentation rules is really important, and that's where I see some of the gap with using DMPs.
Awesome. Thanks for that question, Marcus. I've got one last question here for Takeshi. What are some challenges that you face with B2B personalization?
Thanks for the question, Greg. I'd say one of the biggest challenges is kind of tracking conversions further down the funnel for us. So it's pretty simple to track the conversions that happen on the site, but kind of tying those to metrics further down the funnel, like MQLs and SALs, can be challenging. But we've been able to solve that in a number of ways. There's a number of different integrations that allow us to pass data into Salesforce from Optimizely, so that's one way we've approached it. And another is offline conversions, which just allows us to track conversions in other areas that don't happen on our site through Optimizely.
Right. Excellent, excellent. All right, that concludes the question and answer portion. I see you guys are still asking questions, so we will follow up with you guys individually to answer them. Yeah, so just want to let you, Arun, speak about how people can get in touch with you if they have any additional questions.
Yeah, if you have additional questions, feel free to email them to me. You see my email address up there, and happy to answer them.
Awesome. And what about you, Takeshi? If people want to get in contact with you, how should they reach out?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on Twitter, so feel free to tweet me any questions. If you have anything longer, just send me an email as well.
All right. Yeah, thanks, guys. That wraps up our presentation. We'll be sharing this recording by email shortly, and we really encourage you to pass it around your marketing department and really anyone that might find value in this presentation. Have a great day, everyone.